Hey, Steven, do you want to take me out? This is Julie. I don't know if you guys started the meeting.
We haven't, I mean, we're recording just because I don't know if it was Luke or Pablo left.
Oh, wait,
But-
let me show my face. I'm sorry. I
But
just
you can,
realized
Julie, you can come back, anytime you want. We're not gonna, hi Deb, we're not gonna start with an interview until like 10 after, so,
that. Okay,
and we don't have all our members yet. We're still short Omar and Moses.
so you could put me in the waiting room and just call my name and I'll hear it and I'll pop back.
Well, if Julia knows how to put you in the waiting room, that's great. Otherwise, you could just
Okay, I'll come back
make
on
yourself
then.
a drink.
Okay, I'll come back in 10 minutes.
All right, I can put you in the waiting room,
Well,
Julie.
yeah,
What
Deb's
would you
first
prefer?
anyway, so.
Okay. Thanks.
Julie, would you prefer to be in the waiting room?
Either whatever's easier for you.
Okay, I'll put you in a waiting room and I'll bring you back when we get going.
Okay, good enough. Thanks.
Yeah, I gotta learn how to do this. Julia, does that mean that you create a breakout room? Is that how you do it, or that's
Yeah,
different?
pretty. I mean, I just tapped on her name and it said put in waiting room. So I was like, okay, that works.
Okay,
I've never put anyone in a waiting room before, but figured if it's not, 18 steps, I'd give it a try.
yeah, I see the pause, stop recording. That's easy enough.
Yeah, I think what normally happens is they start recording for us and then like
Well,
when I
because they
do my
stay on till we start, which didn't happen tonight.
yeah.
So waiting for Omar and Moses.
Moses is here. I just let him in.
Hi, Moses.
Hey there. You know?
Howdy.
Mm.
Just waiting for Omar.
Yeah, right. No problem. Sounds good.
So everybody has now said it's okay for us. We haven't sort of started the meeting yet, but since this is something that I know is housekeeping and has already occurred, the June 8th, which we have reserved as a meeting and we may not need, Julia needs that date to have her youth meeting because a holiday has bumped her normal youth meeting. So we'll start June 8th. If we have the meeting at all, we may not, at 6 p.m. I'll tell the board office they should change that. And then Julia, I won't give any directions about youth, but you should be in touch and obviously tell them what needs to be done as far as meeting notice and agenda. Okay,
I appreciate it.
thanks. Just giving Omar a call. I did not get an answer. He's probably in transit. Let's just give him another minute and then, because we had not planned, but Deb, we'll start with you on time and even if Omar's not here,
Yeah,
no
that's
disrespect intended.
no, I'm not feeling any,
recorded.
I'm appreciating the opportunity to actually catch up on my email from the community board today.
Julia, I see here two people entered the waiting room. I don't know if one of those people is Omar. Ah, Omar's here. Great. Hi, Omar.
Hi, sorry, I missed your call.
No problem. That was just to see if you were about to enter. So why don't we do this? We have a few kind of business things to do, but just so we stay on the promised schedule, why don't we kick things off with the interviews now, and then we'll come back at the end and get back to sort of committee business. So I want to welcome Deb, and I feel like the nominating committee got a chance to meet with Deb last year and the year before. It's active committee life. And thanks for coming in. And so I think, Chris, take it away.
Hey, Deb, always good to see you.
Hey, Chris.
Got a couple of quick questions for you, and that's it. It's very painless as usual, as is Community Board 8. Right off the top, describe the work and accomplishments that Parks and Recreation had since basically since you've joined it.
Okay, yeah, no, happy to talk about that. So I became chair of the Parks and Rec Committee back essentially in November of 2022. And you know, I think what the kind of I see the role as one of really trying to support. I mean, Parks is interesting and different in that there's already a lot of volunteer groups out there. There's a lot of people who are already interested in engaging with parks. And then so there's that aspect of it, just really kind of trying to get community engagement focused and connected to the right people within the Parks Department. So I see my role and the committee's role is some of that. And then also kind of advocating for the pieces that I think sometimes it can go under the radar just simply because there's like several layers to them. And so I'll use as one example, the Van Cortlandt Golf Course. So Van Cortlandt Golf Course, you know, I've lived and walked past it a million times. And you know, the state of it, the state of the fencing, the birding bridge, I mean, the Parks Department had come to us since 2017 asking for funding as part of the budget priorities process. And it had often received kind of lower funding in the same way that like the sewer connection to for the temporary structure that was built as part of the filtration plant also kind of tended to be on the lower side. And the reason they were always low priorities wasn't because we didn't value them. We thought they were good projects, but it was always that we thought that there were interagency things that they should be working it out between themselves. And so that birding bridge thing, though, as I was getting going, like in January, like looking at some of the past priorities, I'm like, you know, let's just figure out what's going on here, because it's been hanging out on the list that Parks has been asking for funding for a while. We know it's part of Van Cortlandt Golf Course. We know the fencing around the golf course is in abysmal shape and is dangerous in some places because you can't see. It's collapsed in other places. the golf house itself had plywood up over the windows. It had no posted hours. And so, and it was a little bit of a mystery as to how this concession works. How do concessions work in the parks? What are the rules? Like, what's the expectation, oh, and this was the other piece of the greenway that's adjacent to the Van Cortlandt Golf Course. Back when I was the TNT chair, actually someone had reached out to me and said, hey, the paving is not very good. I knew myself that the paving was not very good. And I had handed over to Ramdad at the time and said, do you have any idea how we can get this addressed? And also that one fell in between the Van Cortlandt Park Alliance and the concession as kind of a, who does this belong to? We don't really know. It's not really ours, we don't think. And so so this year, like one of my kind of projects was really to dig into how the concession process works, where the concessions are, who does what within them, like where's the enforcement arm there, and and what's the best process to like try to raise these issues up. So I was able to get the contracts for the concessions. So for the Van Cortlandt Golf Course, for the Moshlu Golf Course, for the stables. Recently, actually, we just got the annual list, which they apparently publish every year, of all of the concessions in the Bronx. So we can see like which ones are coming up for renewal, which ones are ongoing, which are new. So we discovered there's new food trucks coming. Who knew, And so, so through that process, I was able to find out like, okay, contractually, what is in the Van Cortlandt Golf Course contract? What is the expectation? They are supposed to have a youth program, for example. I was unaware of them having one, but I don't know. I don't play golf there. I don't have kids. Maybe there is something and it's just not well publicized. Maybe, it's going to a select groups of people. So what we did was we put together, kind of just documented current conditions, things that had come up chronically, and then we had a call. We discussed it at the committee level. We said, okay, yeah, we agree. This is the stuff we have concerns about. And we sent it to the concessions unit, which is part of the Parks Department. And they were very receptive, and I have to say they've been very receptive. They reached out immediately to the Van Cortlandt Golf concessionaire. He immediately he himself wasn't aware that there were community concerns around these things. I think because we've gotten used to it, but also you can't call 311. There's no good, how would you ever express your concern? And so it was, he came to the next Parks Committee meeting with the concessions unit. And we were able to have a really good conversation about all of the things that we thought could be improved on, including just simply having hours posted for the restaurant. The Van Cortlandt Golf House is a really lovely restaurant. He spent a lot of money at the beginning of this concession over 20 years ago, renovating the inside of it, this historic building. But the hours are so limited. He made visible like the hours are limited because no one goes in, and he has very little business there. And so, but then the concession unit is like, well, we're open to, if there's somebody who would like to maybe do a pop-up with him, or he can partner, and he can, if he wants somebody else to come run the restaurant for him, he's totally free to do that. So these kinds of things came to the surface. And I feel like that's when the committee's working well, that's the kind of stuff that happens, right? And so just a little bit of, in some ways, public pressure, but also just getting the public opinion to the right person. I think that was a good success. And so, I joke that the posting of the hours on the front of the golf course restaurant is one of my big victories this year, but it actually, yeah, it is. I have a picture of it.
I gotta go over there.
Wow, look at that.
But that was really nice to see, and it's all because Mike Taffet, who's the concessionaire, is totally happy to engage with the community, and and has been really a good person and partner to work with. So stuff like that I think has been really helpful. And then I've also just been trying to engage the stewards groups, and we'll see a little bit of that at the June meeting. We'll have the stewards Partnership for Parks is going to come in and talk a bit more about their programming, and And I made a point of just working with them during the budget priorities part, back in January and February, make sure they knew that we were going to be talking about budget priorities in their parks, and have them come and talk about what is needed. Because of that, we were able to get like the Hackett Park Dog Run came onto the priorities list for the first time. The Bruss Park Staircase came onto the priorities for the first time. And also, not for nothing, just giving feedback back to these groups to go talk to the electeds themselves, and that's how the process works and how they should be engaging with it. I feel like that's what we do, right? Is we try to teach folks the process because there's layers to it.
I gotta say, you just said a mouthful and just wiped out a lot of my questions. But I do have a few more. You're doing great. Here's something that
Yeah.
wasn't. How would you go about, seeing that this has come up recently, encouraging and maintaining civility and decorum during meetings in your role as chair?
Yeah, well, I used to be the chair of the TNT committee, which is a master class in civility and decorum. And I'm not gonna say I'm a master of it, but that I got a good dose of it. I think a few things. One, I think that it's really important to say up front what the rules of the road are. That especially for people who are tuning in the first time. Because I think, a lot of folks don't understand how the committee meetings are supposed to work. This goes for the board meetings too. And I think it's really easy for people, especially on the board level, to be like, oh, what do you mean I can't speak? Like that feels really exclusionary. But it's also when you send folks over to the committee meetings, you also want to make sure that they understand they can speak and make sure you're creating times for them to speak. Even if the time is tight, right? Because it's a lot of people want to speak, or there's a lot on the agenda, making it really clear up front how that will work, that they may only get to speak once, that it may be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, that that I will be calling on people, and this is the order I'm calling people on people, that kind of thing. I think those pieces are really important. And then
being on that committee with you, that you would always be very forthright. Every meeting, it would be, this is the way we proceed with Robert's rules, and you'd lay it out. And I do remember it well. You really laid that out well.
Thank you. I just remember being a newbie, trying to figure out what the heck was going on,
A doobie. Are you alluding to romper room days?
Newbie.
A newbie, a
Sorry.
civilian.
And you know what? Now this is recorded. Chris Calhoun said doobie. Forget it. Strike that from the record.
Yeah, start the recording.
Describe any goals you might have in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and steps you would take to essentially achieve those goals.
Well, I think the first part is just that, is like explaining how the meetings work, making sure they're super accessible so that, people understand that they should speak, that they're welcome to speak, that we want to hear from people. And that I think I do feel like we could do a better job of, like, with new board members, of kind of mentoring them a bit. I think your first year as a board member is really, at least for me, my first year as a board member was really difficult, like trying to learn how everything worked, and whether I was like, where am I supposed to be getting what emails, like what comes automatically, what do I need to ask for, what should I be reading before each meeting, that kind of stuff wasn't always clear. And maybe I could have asked each individual chair, except that each individual chair kind of ran their meetings differently. And so it was a little bit intimidating, and sometimes chairs are just a little bit wacky, and so they can be a little bit intimidating when you're a new board member. So I feel like those things, and then also just reaching out to folks in my community to encourage them. There's several people that I've encouraged to join the board, and Transportation Alternatives has asked me for the last couple of years to be on a panel for anybody who wants to come and learn about being on a board. And so I've always done that panel for anybody who's interested in learning more about it. Washington's Walk, there's been a catalyst site for Partnership for Parks for the last couple of years, and I've been doing outreach there to try to encourage folks down on Washington's Walk to join. So I feel like just, wherever you can, try to encourage all of the people that you see around you who are just community leaders. It's really great to have all of them on the board. There's plenty, there's plenty of open spots. I'm also just lucky, because I run a park stewardship group. So, we've got about 300 folks on our mailing list, and I see new people all these kids need, volunteer credits. I see all kinds of kids. And so I've had the opportunity of meeting a lot of people when they're juniors and seniors and trying to encourage them to run on the board as well.
Next question. In your case, why do you want to continue to be chair of the Parks Committee?
I really enjoy the Parks. I enjoy the Parks Committee. I enjoy the work of it. I've been on the Parks Committee every year that I've been on the board. I like being a chair because I like organizing things. I like kind of setting the agendas for the meetings. I think I could do better at trying to get more engagement from my committee. I think that that's an art for sure. Because everybody's busy and you have to, a lot of people, they've got kids, they've got jobs that are demanding, or 2 jobs. And so I want to be really sensitive to that.
Okay.
But yeah.
This kind of ties in with what you just said. The nominating committee we've had discussions during our committee meetings, and just like to get your opinion on the following, and it all kind of ties in together. So it's in no particular order.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably noticed in the committees you're on, and just over the years, that some of the committees seem very unbalanced, like there are not enough members on them.
Mm-hmm.
What could you see going forward, trying to balance the playing field out a little better? Also, maybe, what do you think of, and this is all your opinion, of consolidating some committees? Maybe we have too many committees on Board 8, and this would also maybe help in ensuring attendance. How can we get that done? And I can just say from personal experience, at times I can't even get a quorum. And as I said to my nominating committee cohorts here, it's embarrassing at times, because then you got to put all your work right in front of the board, and it just extends our full board meeting. So
Yeah.
Just briefly, what is your opinion on, they all kind of tie, they're all intermingled. What is your opinion on that?
I really liked the discussion we had. At least Dalba, I know, made a presentation at the exec about consolidating youth and aging. She had some ideas about committees that could be consolidated. I myself think it would just be useful to just look at how other community boards are organizing themselves. As part of this year, we passed a resolution supporting PEP and getting a PEP command at Ben Cortlandt Park. And as part of that, I went to the community board 12 and 7 committees and presented there to get their support for it. And I got letters from both of them, from both the committees and both of the boards supporting our resolution. But it was also really kind of interesting just to see how they're organized, and that they're organized differently, and they've combined things a little bit differently. So, and that other community boards, some community boards have actually cultural affairs and parks combined, because so often cultural affairs stuff and parks organizations like Wave Hill are the same, So that's, I think, probably, it would be great to just have a discussion about how these things are organized. So we mostly go around agencies, but some of these agencies, there's agencies like, the Office of Resiliency and stuff. There's all kinds of organizations and agencies, like maybe we can combine them in a way that makes good sense. I really did like her idea of having kind of a public, what was it? It was like a community outreach and engagement kind of committee. I thought that was a really interesting idea, because I think there's a lot you could do there, both in trying to get folks involved with the the board itself and joining the board, but there's also like this step before joining the board of just getting folks to regularly attend the meetings and be engaged with what's on the agendas, and even presenting or suggesting agenda ideas, you know, that you often when you're the chair, you kind of are doing these things in a vacuum. And so I like that idea of like having a committee that was organized around those topics.
Deb, thanks. Was there anything that I missed or you were hoping I was going to ask you or just want to add? Although you've been very thorough,
Yeah.
bring everything I've asked of you this evening.
How do I manage to be so concise? That you didn't ask me that.
I'll get a demerit for that.
So no, you've asked all kinds of great questions, and I appreciate being able to come in front of the committee and to talk to you.
I would like to say on behalf of the nominating committee, unless any of my fellow members have anything to add or ask, I thank you for your time this evening and for your answers to all the questions. It was great, and it's always nice to see you, Deb.
Yeah, good to see you guys too. Good luck with all of the work. You've got a lot of work this year on the committee, so I applaud your efforts in taking this on. So thank you for all that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks
night,
very
all.
much, Deb.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, should I bring
Fantastic.
Julie? Should I bring
just-
Julie in from the waiting room?
Yeah, just actually, before you do, I mean, I think that was great, Chris. I think we covered all the ground. But definitely folks should be able to ask questions after. I mean, you happen to do a super thorough job and Deb is very anticipating other questions and stuff. So that was great. But definitely with the next couple of candidates, I think everybody after the standard questions are asked, and they're good questions. They're not just pro forma, but then I think definitely everybody should have an opportunity to add questions, especially because this is the real leadership coming up. So yeah, that would be great, Julia.
Should be coming in now.
Hi, Julie.
Sorry about that. Hello?
Hi. There you go.
Okay. Great, let me take off my picture. Okay, there I am.
Hi.
Hi.
So welcome to the committee and thanks for coming in, and we're even on time. And I know you ran a tight ship when you chaired the committee. So I think, it falls to me. We were sort of assigning people to ask questions. So let me start by asking if you could describe your experience on the board, whether it be being in charge of committees or special projects or the like, for the time you've been on the board, because that, just to give us a little context for you and where you're headed.
Okay, good enough. Well, thank you all for taking the time to meet with me. I've actually been on the board since, surprising to me, I was looking through a few things since 1999. God, that dates me. But I've been on the board since 1999. And when I joined the board, naturally we were meeting in person and there were so many people. I think it was a full board at the time. And someone told me the best way to know everyone, because how will you know everyone's name, is by, attending as many meetings as you can. And that's what I did. And eventually, after attending quite a few meetings and getting involved, I ended up chairing the Public Safety Committee early on in my time with the board. I chaired that committee, the Public Safety, for a few years. And then I went on to chair a few other committees. I chaired the Economic Development Committee. And I have to say, back then, even though it was a good committee, the current chair does a fabulous job. So does Public Safety, but the way Economic Development was back then, it wasn't the same. But I chaired that committee, the Public Safety Committee. I've been on the News Free Committee, which when it was formulated, I vice chair that committee. I'm on the housing committee. I've vice chaired that for a few years. And I was a treasurer at one time for the board. What else did I do? I've been on land use since the beginning. At one point, everyone had to be a member of the land use committee, and because it is vital, I feel it's vitally important to the board and the community, I picked that as one of my current 2 committees. Currently, I'm on housing and land use, but I'm also with SCREE. And I've been on a few nominating committees. And most recently, I was on the committee for the search committee for the district manager, which is something that we desperately needed. And I'm glad to say we selected a very, very qualified person to come on board. So my tenure has been long, and I try to stay involved. So now I'm looking at the time that I have, and I feel I have enough time. I believe I have enough experience, and that's one of the reasons why I put in my request to be considered to be the chair of the committee, of the board rather.
Great, thank you. I had no idea that you were,
You know,
I knew you told me you were on the board before I was, but I didn't realize how much.
I know, and I was fortunate because when I joined when I joined the board, we were meeting in person, and even though I love Zoom, I honestly do, I think is real convenient. I see the difference from Zoom meetings and in-person meetings. And as much as I love Zoom meetings, I really think we have to get back on like live, because the value that I gained from past board members and even current board members, the knowledge that they have and the way that they share. The Zoom meetings are great, but I think it holds back people to be really honest and to share. And a lot of nastiness has come out of it, which I'm not crazy about. But I've been on the board for quite a few times, and I have to say I was fortunate in meeting the past chairs of the board, and they were very helpful, very knowledgeable, and inviting. They shared their knowledge, which is something that I think in-person meetings would definitely help.
There are a few people who have joined the waiting room, 2 of which are phone numbers. I wasn't sure if they should be admitted.
I think so, but I think it's probably right for me to quickly ask them to identify themselves. That sounds
Yep.
good.
Just wanted to give you a heads up. So
Thank
letting
you.
him in now. And Sergio is also in the waiting room. Should I admit him as well?
I guess you could admit him when it's time for his interview, or you can ask,
Okay.
I guess you can ask him, but whatever. I mean. Hi, could some of the people who just joined identify themselves? I just see phone numbers.
Georgia, 718-562-8186.
Got it.
I know that voice.
Yeah. Hi, folks. How's everybody?
Hi, Georgia.
Who's it?
Hi there.
917-669-2677.
Margaret.
Hey, Margaret. Sorry, Julie.
No problem.
So I was going to ask you, Julie, if you're elected, how would you fulfill the responsibilities of the chair position over the coming years? And if you could just tell us something about your vision for the role and the goals you'd like to achieve as you've been thinking about this.
Okay. My goals in the role and how I would move forward. First, I would continue the good work that the current chair has done. And I know that being a chair is not easy. I know that there's a lot of work involved. I know this from my past position as a president of a not-for-profit that I was with for about 10 years. And it was all a voluntary board, and it was a lot of work similar to what we do at the board office. So I don't take it lightly, the position as a chair. And with my past experience as a president of a not-for-profit, we dealt it was an outreach into the communities on breast health care, breast cancer particularly. And we did a lot of work with the community, the constituents, and elected politicians, because we had to survive for funds, different than the board office, but we still had to interact. So my role with the community board would be similar. With the staff that we have now, it makes life a lot easier to fulfill whatever goals that you may want or the board may want. And I think being centrally located is one of the visions that the board has had for quite a few years. I would like to continue that and hopefully attain that goal. Get us back to being more cohesive, even though everyone appears to be on the same page. It's just not as cohesive and as mannerly as it should be, because we represent the community and the residents, and we have to do a better job than what we've been doing lately. So my goal is to continue to work and get us all the services. We're advisory, first of all, so I can't get anything. We're just advisories and we advocate, and I look to continue that.
Thanks. Actually, you know, on that subject of civility and mannerliness, that is something that committee talked about. I don't know that it was asked as a question last year, but it certainly has, you know, been more of an issue. How would you go about encouraging and maintaining civility and decorum during meetings, you know, as chair? Since of all the different positions that people come and seek, that's probably the one that has the greatest influence as a single person.
On Zoom meetings, I have to admit, that's probably the most challenging job of anyone conducting a meeting nowadays, to control and not speak as low as the person or people who are trying to antagonize you for whatever reason. I would try to remember I'm civil and I'm representing others and not just myself. I would do anything that's legally possible, because I don't know if you can just mute someone. Because that would be my first. If you can mute someone, like because sometimes I wish that people could just be muted. I will look to see first if that's possible. I wouldn't just automatically mute someone, but I would hope that if there were objections, eventually we could just mute some of these people that just go beyond the focus of what the meeting is about and take us off track. But I would be civil. I would remember that I'm not a member, and I would act accordingly as a chair, you know, because those are two different hats. But I would definitely be civil. I wouldn't stoop as low as them, and I would try to move the meeting along. Well, I wouldn't try, I would move the meeting along.
Do you think there's anything structurally that could be done in the terms of like having, I don't know, I think I may have missed this year, like some sort of civility code or mission statement? It's been discussed at LRE in the retrospect as if it happened and I may have missed it. Is there something like that? Could there be
that
something
would be good?
more?
I know some community boards have a sergeant at arms, but we don't. But that would be something that maybe the Law, Rules, and Ethics Committee can look into, because we have to be able to just stop it, because it deters people. We've lost good members on our board just because they don't want to stay on all night. I know I don't want to stay on all night and listen to the bickering when we should really be discussing issues. And in all my years on the board, it has never been as bad as it has since the Zoom. And I've only been on a few years, but
you know, I wanted to ask about this because this is actually something that, excuse me 1 second, email has come in and I want about this. So, oh no, okay. So Julia, could you, am I still with everybody? Julia, could you admit Sergio? I wasn't sure if he wanted to be in, but he definitely does, because he was asking via email if this was an executive session. So please invite him. Thank you, or admit him, or whatever that right jargon is. What I was going to ask Julie is, right now we're going from, I think, 2-month to 2-month period where remote meetings are being extended. And I know we're all kind of like, oh my gosh, it could be gone. But what happens if that continues? Because sometimes, right, there's an inertia to that kind of thing. And the mayor keeps issuing declarations. Would you take the step as chair of sort of leaving Zoom? I mean, I know there's the hybrid meeting option as well, but would you basically send the board back in person, even if there is still this emergency declaration from 2-month to 2-month?
So Julie, sorry, just before you answer, sorry, Steve, I think you need to be the one to admit him, because I think something happened with Julia's computer, which I disconnected. So if you see on the top of your screen, you should be able to have it met.
Okay, got it.
All right. Sorry about that, Julie.
That's okay.
Just, this is like landing a plane.
Uh,
Okay. No, I think, okay. I
there we
think,
go. You got it?
Sure.
Yeah.
yeah,
Perfect. There you go. All right, we got it. Technology. Good job.
okay,
Thank you,
Julia's
Sergio.
back, and that was a metaphysical dilemma, Julia. You were the host and you needed to get back in.
You got it. You got it. You figured it out. All right. Sorry. Continue.
Hi, Sergio. Sorry, I didn't know that you wanted to be in, so anyway, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
You turn on the camera. Okay.
Let's see, where were we? Oh, yes, so would you do that? Would you send the
Okay,
minutes back
so
in person?
that's a two-prong. That's a two-prong part, I believe, because personally, I would like us to be back in a in-person meeting. But then again, we have the officers and the boards to consider. So I would work jointly. That would be my preference, but I would try to lead the way to go back, but I would also take into consideration of what the officers' mindset was and what they wanted as well. And somehow or another, if people didn't want it to, I guess the hybrid is the compromise in it. But personally, even though I love Zoom, I think for the sake of the board, we need to get back in person.
I also wanted to ask something about something that came up at our last nominating committee meeting, but had sort of had a history. And that is issues having to do with committee size, very unequal size committees,
Right,
ensuring attendance at committee meetings, not the same thing, but kind of related.
right, it is.
Getting a quorum. And then finally, Lisa Dobbs' proposal, which led to some discussion about consolidation of committees, reorganization of committees. So I'm sorry to throw all those three things at you at once, but those are related. What are your views on those issues? How to ensure attendance? What do you think about trying to equalize the size of committees? And however you would do that, whether it's appointing or however. And finally, the consolidation issue.
I think equalizing the committees is very important because without a quorum, a committee can't really move forward with resolutions. You can have discussions, but it's just you could stay home and have discussions. You're coming to a meeting and you want to be productive and get something done. So I totally agree with limiting or not limiting, or at least trying to make the committees as equal as possible. And for those who want to be in a committee and may be phased out for whatever reason, they can always attend other meetings. You're not limited to just your committee. So it's not as if though you'll be leaving anyone out, but to possibly ask for people for their top two preference and maybe their top three and accommodate them to at least have two of the top three of their choices. And if they want, they can always attend any meetings that they wish and participate there, because whatever the committee decides, it still has to come to the full board. So it's not as if though anyone's being left out or their voice won't be heard, because it still has to be decided by the full board. And without uneven committees, you may have, I remember once when I was in economics, I had a meeting and there was just one person showed up. We only had a limited amount of people, and that's happening now in the housing committee. You have 3 people on a committee, and if one person doesn't show up and maybe 2, you're sitting there alone, which is unfair to the chair because you put in a lot of work as a chair. People think being a chair, oh, it's nothing, you just hold a meeting. No, you have to research, you have to get speakers, you have to get your information and be productive. And it's not fair to a chair to just have 2 or 3 people in a committee and for what? So I do believe in limiting or trying to equalize the committee. There was another question with that.
Ensuring people attend to get your quorum, and then the question of consolidation, which may be related.
Okay, for getting people to attend, I think maybe to take a good look at that and check in on them if they're missing maybe 2 or 3. Because I remember myself meeting a few, but they were for personal reasons. And if we don't check in, we don't know what's going on, just to make sure that it's a valid reason. But if you're gone for like 7 meetings, that's an issue. But I think if we checked in with the people to first find out what's going on, are they okay? Because there could be valid reasons why they may miss 2 or 3. But if it's just someone who just doesn't care, doesn't show up, and doesn't participate, I think the 3-set rule is a good rule when warranted. As far as consolidating committees, that's been done in the past. I would leave that up to the general consensus, because we all have different ideas of what committees should be merged and which shouldn't. I would be open to it, but I would want to hear both sides on why you're merging committees.
Do you have any particular preferences since you'd be in a position to lead?
Not really. I think if a committee chair feels that their committee is lacking in certain things and may want to join with another committee, I think we have to listen to the committee chair since they would know best what's good for their committee.
Related question we haven't discussed before, but it just occurs to me. Do you have any, what would you do about having open chair positions on committees? I ask this because I can't predict what will happen at the June meeting, but as of now, and it's no secret because we sent the nominating committee sent out, a communication about this. We had not had people step forward to ask to be considered for aging, housing, and health, hospitals, and social services. So that's.
I remember being on nominating committees in the past and how we each divvied up and contacted people to see, just called everyone on the board, call every single board members. Sometimes you may have a board member who may feel that they're not ready for it, or a new person who is ready and doesn't even realize that they're ready for it. I would say call every single board member and see. Some people just aren't as assertive and just won't put in for a position for various reasons. I would say contact everyone. I don't know if you guys have done that, but
Yes,
we have
yes.
quite a few. We have a
Well,
lot of new members.
Yeah, we have not contacted everyone, like people who
I've
don't
contacted them all.
people who don't come to board meetings are not good candidates for committee chair. But no, we really have tried.
That's a tough one, because you don't want to get just anybody. You want to get someone who wants to be there, or who may have an interest in it or have some knowledge of it. And even if they don't, they can learn. That's a tough one. I would go first for the person who's been there the longest in that committee. And then after that, see who the past chair would recommend.
Yep. Well, we're not completely done, but we're almost done with our outreach. So
That's a hard one. I know that's a hard one.
My last question, but I think other committee members will have their own questions.
Mhm.
My last question is, if you could describe any goals you have in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the board, for the board. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, and I saw when I came on the board, Fernando Ferreira was the borough president. And when I came on the board, the diversity was practically zero in 1999. Through the years, I have to say, and I let him know when I saw him at Bill Stone's street naming, the diversity from 1999 to now has been incredible. I know we still have ways to go, but from back then to now, on all areas, where people live, their ethnic backgrounds, their racial ethnicity, their genders, everything, it really has improved. And I think outreach is the way to do it. You have to be able to tell the public on who we are and what we stand for and invite them in. And again, it comes back to these Zoom meetings. No one's going to want to come in if all we're doing is bickering. They have to see that we're doing something, we stand for something, and we're active. So I think definitely continued diversity. It's never enough. But we have to do our outreach in order to do that. And we have to be civil when we meet as a group in order to get that accomplished. And the outreach,
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Other members, please. I know I spoke for a lot of questions.
I
Chris.
see 2 hands.
Hey, Julie, really enjoyed listening to your answers and responses this evening.
Thank you.
My one question is simple.
Mhm.
That definitely is not Orchard Beach behind you, known as the Bronx Riviera. However,
Hey, I grew up in Orchard Beach.
it makes me want to suit up right now and dive in. That's all I have for you.
Thank you. I love Orchard Beach. No, it's not. And I'm in the Bronx. I, you know, the position, I think it's an important decision because I do think so. Because I know in Zoom meetings, you don't get enough done and you can't get enough answers back and forth. Like in the past, we would meet in live and you'd be able to talk to people. So what I've done, because I think it is an important role, I've called a few people and I intend to call the board to let them know that I'm running, if they have any questions on why I'm running, anything that they want to know about me, because we really can't do that much on Zoom. I'm not calling people asking for their support or anything like that. That's what people do with the meetings. You see everybody polling. No, I'm just calling to let them know I'm running, because people can still run from the floor. And on a Zoom meeting, I don't know, I just want people to know who I am and what I stand for and what I could do. So I do think it's an important role. I have the time for it and I'm very flexible with my time. So, you know, and I have participated in other boards. Locally, years ago, I was at the Riverdale Mental Health Association, which is right in the board office, but they're now Mosaic Health. I was on their board, and I was also on my co-op board. So I've been on a few other boards, but just locally, those are the two local boards that I've been on. So I'm not crazy as one board member said when I called him just to tell him, he says, "What are you, crazy?" No, I just think that I have the experience and I have the time, and the time is really what's it. I have more time now, so I figured, let me go for it.
Thanks. Committee members? Anyone else?
I see one hand up.
I think that's not a committee member, but is that
Yeah.
Margaret?
Yeah, I think that's been us since the beginning, though. I'm not sure if that's actually a question. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She came in with her hand up.
I see. Okay, I used my chair's prerogative and I lowered the hand. Well, if nobody else has any questions, Julie, thanks a lot for coming in. And if there's anything that we didn't cover and you want to add anything, please do. I know it was sort of wide-ranging discussion, but things always get missed. Is there anything else you want to add or?
No, just that I'm willing, able, and ready if chosen. And if not, I will respect the nominating committee decision because I've been in your shoes. So whatever decision you abide by, I will respect. And that's all I have to say because I know you guys have a tough job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you. Everybody have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we are almost on schedule. It's close. Any committee members have anything they want to chime in with before we move on? Because we want to build ourselves in just a little cushion if something's come up, like Steve shut up or something like that.
Nothing like that. No, I think I'm okay.
Okay, good. Well, Sergio, welcome.
I will unmute and turn it on.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, all.
Hi. Well, Moses is going to lead the questioning here, but all committee members are, free to chime in. Thank you.
All right. Hey there, Sergio.
Hey, Moses. How you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. And this is an important role because it's one of the two primary leaders of this board. So thank you for stepping up for the consideration as well. So I just have a few questions for you. Biggie, you can help us go through. So starting off, just can you please describe your past participation and work on the board? I know you've been engaged with a lot of things, but just your accomplishments for any of the board committees or activities that you've been on or that you chaired, and the things you want to share with us in that regard. Oh, I think you're on mute, Sergio. Sorry. Yeah.
That was part of my plan to win everyone's vote. Staying on mute, I find is more effective for me than actually people hearing what I have to say. But fine. So well, I've been on the board since Oliver Capel. So yeah, now people are dating. I don't go back as far back as Fernando Ferrer. But yeah, Oliver Capel was the council member who was there when I got appointed. I came on with Rosemary, Dan. I believe I don't know if Steve came on, if I came on with Steve Fruit or not. Steve may have been a year or two after. Anyway, way back then. So I immediately came when I came on. I immediately had an interest in public safety and economic development. So I got on both of those committees when Maria Curry was running the Economic Development Committee, and Arlene Feldmeyer was the chair of public safety. So that was, that was a learning experience. I have experience in both. Back, I grew up in the neighborhood. I went to PS 7, 141, John F. Kennedy High School. This is where I'm from. I've served the city. Well, I was in the 5 as an auxiliary police officer as a teenager, as a volunteer. I've been a New York City, I'm a retired New York City police officer as an EMT. And the last place I worked as in New York City EMS was actually out of the 50th precinct. So the neighborhood itself is. I'm sorry if I'm segueing a little bit into
No, please.
into your answer, but maybe it'll answer some of the other questions that people have. So immediately I gravitated towards economic development and the public safety committee. While I was a police officer and an EMT, I finished college. I went to LaGuardia Community College because my grades were nothing much to speak of in high school. I actually dropped out for a couple of months and went back. And then went to the City College of New York, then ended up at Fordham Law School in the evening division while I was working full time as a police officer. And that's where I got my law degree and became an attorney. But when I came on the board, as I had my own business, because as an attorney, I've always had my own practice, and I was always very involved in the community, and public safety was one of the nearest and dearest things to me. So the business side of it and the public safety side of it, I gravitated towards both of those committees. Within a few years, I became chairman of the Economic Development Committee. I can say so there was challenging times because our board it's tough to get new things through, and I'm happy to say some of my accomplishments are the Riverdale Avenue Merchants Fair, which the Economic Development Committee back then supported very strongly. Had a lot of opposition from board members, all kinds of opposition. We had a petting zoo, and then what if the goat gets away was a question. All kinds of opposition, but now pre-COVID, it's one of the best events in the neighborhood. People come to the event, people show up. People from the community board show up, and like they say, success has 1,000 fathers, failure is an orphan. That one, everyone's happy. They're happy to embrace, but it didn't just happen. So helping organize and work with the South Riverdale merchants, the Kingsbridge Road merchants as well, because remember, half of Kingsbridge Road is in community board number 7. So going out there, working with our partners like KRVDC, they have a Marble Hill. Well, they're a great organization, but I was certainly suggesting strongly that they go to Marble Hill, they go to Kingsbridge, and they did. To their credit, they helped organize there, they helped do things there that hitherto had not been done. My committee, one of the traditions that it's nice to see is still going. If you go to the Economic Development Committee, they meet at different venues throughout the board. That was something that I did. I made sure that we went to different restaurants, went to different establishments to, number one, highlight that, to have the meeting there and see what the merchants are going through, and number two, to actually highlight them, to say, look, these are some good people here. This is John. This is people who came on the board later on, Steve from Blue Bay, et cetera. That these are good people, and I've always believed that good businesses are also should be good neighbors. So the two things aren't mutually exclusive, and working with the businesses is a big thing that I think I brought to the committee and to the board, because it wasn't always a natural thing, and it's still I'm right now in the Public Safety Committee, and it's still a struggle, it's still, that you're balancing the need for accountability to the community and the need to let people make a living and not let the community board become another layer of bureaucracy on top of all of the bureaucracy that they have to go through. So that's a regular thing you still hear me talking about. Like, there are no issues with this establishment. Why are we taking them out of dinner time to have, management come to a meeting when they've been in the neighborhood 30 years and there's no issue. If somebody has noise or somebody has disorderly conduct in the area, absolutely, they should come to the community board before their liquor license is up, and we should talk to them and we should say, hey, what's going on? And I believe some of that does happen because I believe the current chairman of economic development is very, very proactive in terms of that. So that's a good thing. But those are some of the things that I've accomplished, I've worked on. Transparency is one of I'm usually the first person asking to go out of executive session and asking, why we're going into executive session when we have discussions at the executive committee about personnel and such. And sometimes the discussions veer off into policy, and if anybody's been on those, they will hear me saying, is this appropriate for executive session? Because I believe that the public should be privy to the work and not just what we vote on, but how it gets done. I know, speaking of accomplishments, with the we are subject to FOIL and we keep records, and I know that was a pain a few years back when we actually received a big FOIL Freedom of Information Law request. But I said, this is what we have to do. And of late, anybody I think on the exec committee or at the office has known, I've been advocating and saying that I really feel it's inappropriate for us to be using private servers for city business. I think that that's something that should not happen. I think that, I'm here today. If I kick the bucket tomorrow, you will not have access to my AOL account. And that it should not depend, the public's access to the people's work should not depend just on my having a Gmail account that says CB8 at the end and me being of a generous spirit and saying, oh yeah, here you go. Here's everything. Oh, maybe I missed a couple of things. So transparency is another one of the major things that I'm interested in, because I think, transparent government makes for better government. And I'll stop there for now.
Thanks, Sergio. No, that was great. Answered a few questions already I had in there. So that was nice and that easy then. One other question I did have for you then, just to get a little more specific then, what's your vision for this role? How do you plan to, what's your vision for what you want to accomplish in this role as vice chair? And how you plan to work with the chair to kind of make that vision possible?
That's a great question, right? Like why does anybody run for vice chair? I'm here to help. This is all volunteer, and I believe that, and that we should all be cordial to each other, even if we disagree with each other. And anybody who's been around, long enough, knows I'm not afraid to be the only one to vote no, in the room, and that's okay. I think we can disagree without being disagreeable, but I would bring a voice of experience and reason. I'm a parliamentarian. I'm a trained parliamentarian, so Robert's Rules of Order is a second nature to me. I think that would be helpful at that level, and not the chair certainly, but to be there to support the community, the chair, but the community board as a whole. And I think this is the right time. I'm chairing a special committee on veterans right now, which we do a couple of things. It's not a super heavy lift. So this is something else that I feel that I have the time and energy and the bandwidth on the community board to help support.
Fantastic, thanks, Sergio. And then you touched on that a little bit, so I want to dig in this other side as well. What do you think you can do to encourage and maintain civility and decorum in the meetings in your role as a board officer?
It's a large part of it is frankly a role of the chair. You know, in Robert's Rules of Order, you know, anyone could bring a point of order, and I've brought points of order before when things have gotten too personal. I have, you know, a call for point of order, which takes precedence over other motions and such. And it's a difficult thing, but I think constantly reminding people that, you know, please follow the rules. Please follow not just the rules, please follow what your parents taught you. You know, my mother would not be proud of some of the things we do. You know, it just, please follow what your parents taught you. Just don't speak over people, and reminding people and knowing that we're all, you know, I don't know, maybe you guys get paid. I've never gotten paid for this.
I'm still waiting for that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Maybe you guys that you know, everybody, and my approach is that, you know, barring finding something out, which I'm not looking for, is that everybody here has their heart in the right place. You're taking your time out, you know, it's a Monday night, you could be doing something else. You're taking your time out to do this. So, you know, your heart's in the right place. I start from there. We could disagree on things. We do, you know, and like I said, I've been, you know, I've been voted down, you know, things I thought of many times, and that's okay. But we don't have to be so personal, so visceral, which I think going in, one of the things that was mentioned before is that really, and I know from speaking to people who have encouraged to come on the board, turns people off. So the civility issue is a retention issue, it's a recruitment issue, it's a diversity issue. You know, that if you're coming from neighborhoods where that usually are not represented, and you're there and somebody's yelling at you and doing these things, you're like, why am I here? You know, it doesn't allow room for development and growth. And as you know, I'm retired from the Coast Guard Reserve as well after 32 years. I retired as a commander, and really it doesn't help us develop people, which is something I don't think we do. Is really like, you know, groom somebody to be chair of something. Say, hey, come with me. Hey, you know, show up at the meeting. Hey, you know, you're my vice chair. Why don't you go to exec? You know, and sit in and see what that's like. See what the conversations are like, you know, in that room, which is something I would be looking, you know, hopefully be in a better position to do as vice chair.
Got it. Fantastic. Thanks, Sergio. Just a couple more questions. One, it's come up a few times, both in different meetings and even during this process here. So we actually wanted to more formally ask, what are your views on this proposal that's been starting to circulate about consolidating board committees, equalizing the number of board committees, all in theory of getting towards the goal of ensuring there's attendance at committee meetings so that there's balance and people can actually have forums for discussions?
You know, it's a tough, it's equalizing committees. I'll try and break it down. Equalizing committees is rather hard because, you know, it's a volunteer organization, as we know. So volunteer management is much different than employee management, than who you work for management. You know, if I work for you and you pay my salary, at the end of the day, you say do this, and I'm like, okay, you're the boss. You know, when you're in a volunteer organization, even if you're the chair, the vice chair, what have you, you're speaking to somebody else. You can't speak to them that way. You can't be like, screw you, you're not getting that committee that you want. You've got to figure out a way to work it out. So I don't think necessarily equalizing the committees is the right approach. I think we look to see where the committees fall, like what people's interests are, see where people end up. And you kind of have to see, like, and this is where having some experience on the board, even though it's hard, you know, even though it's hard to, because there are always new people, that you look at it and say, all right, you know, this committee is going to be okay with 5 people. This committee is going to be okay with 5 people. Yes, you know, 10, 12 people want to be on this committee. You know, it's a hot button committee, or there's an issue in the community that people join the board for. But you're always going to get, you know, 8 or 9 people to show up, because quorum is important, right, to take care of business. So for me, it's that you have a group, and that quorum could be attained at that group is more important than saying every committee's got 6 people. That, I don't think that being that prescriptive is appropriate. But if you start having problems, then you have to reach out to people and say, hey, do you really want to be on this committee? Is there something wrong? Can we help you? And, you know, and address it from there. But those are kind of the one-offs, you know, so, because you do have to let people kind of go where they came. You know, I had things that were in my heart when I came to the board, and I was lucky they let me go on those committees.
Got it. Nope, fair enough. Appreciate it. All right, so just one last question from me. Can you describe any goals you may have? I think you touched on it a little bit, but on the areas of like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then steps you would take to help achieve those goals.
I would, you know, continue, you know, there is outreach. I would do more of the outreach to our local organizations throughout the board that would naturally create more diversity. You know, our churches, our centers, places like that, to get people in. It just kind of, and then it goes towards keeping people. You know, are they engaged? Are people being civil? Is it just, you know, oh, you know, you're just a horrible person and you're just this or that, and how dare you, and I've never seen this in my 20 years, and you know, if it's just that, we lose people. That's why I said civility is connected to retention, because we do get people appointed from diverse populations. If we notice, and I've done a study, but they often don't come back after the first couple of meetings. I could think of 4 off the top of my head who just never came back, came to 1 or 2 meetings and really said, I'm not coming back. So it's not just getting people in the door, it's retaining them. And I think that's where the civility and the development and the mentorship all play a role in that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sergio. I appreciate it. That was great back and forth, I think, on those questions from me. So I think I'll hand it off to anyone else in the committee who may have any additional questions. I think I see one from Chris.
I have a couple of observations. Sergio, I liked your responses, and I liked your candidness about how deeply rooted you are in this community. Actually, my early education mirrored yours. I went to PS7, 141, and JFK as well. Probably administrations. Milton Fine, Norman Kaufman, and Robert Mastruzzi.
Yes, Mastruzzi. My buddy and I, I'm sorry, my buddy and I were trying to get that name. Thank you. We couldn't remember.
Thank you. Okay, the answer is Mastruzzi. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to say was I attended a wonderful event that you chaired at the Memorial Grove at Van Cortlandt Park for veterans. Even though it was drizzly and rainy, and I think I said to Chair Spalter, I think I'm going to go across the street after this is over and throw myself into dryer number 2 in Riverdale Laundromat next to Jake's. But other than that, that was a well-run event. That's all I have to say. And thank you for your presentation.
Well, thank you. I left out Memorial Grove, near and dear to my heart. Thank you, Chris, for bringing that up. To Moses, to answer your question about one of my accomplishments is I didn't accomplish it. Herb Barrett accomplished it from the Jewish War veterans, but he retired and I kind of took over for him to help keep it going. And that is one of my proudest things. And I apologize for leaving that out.
Thank you.
Sergio, I wanted to follow up on, I'm sorry, Moses.
No, I was gonna hand it back to you. So yeah, please.
Oh, okay. No, Sergio, I wanted to follow up on those related issues. You hit on the equal numbers of people on committee subject that came up in our discussion, the last meeting. What about Lisa Daub's proposal regarding consolidation? But don't limit yourself to that. I mean, you may have others ideas about consolidation in a different kind of consolidation, or not at all. That issue, and then separately, what do we do about ensuring attendance at committee meetings?
Well,
hold on just a second.
Okay.
Omar, I think, has dropped and needs to be admitted, and I did not know how to do that. Hi, Omar. What's up? I don't,
Yeah,
I'm
it'd be at the top, the same way we had to get Sergio and Julia back in. And then if you go back to the main screen, it should be at the top. No, can I see that?
I'm not seeing you in the waiting room, if that makes sense. Okay, but I'll keep looking for you on the side. Okay. Yeah, I do not have a good record. Sorry, Sergio. So the consolidation issue on one hand and the committee attendance, committee meeting attendance.
You know, I think that the city, I'm also on the youth committee. And I think that the aging and youth are kind of doing a beta program of it, right? They're having joint meetings, I believe once per quarter, if I'm correct, or something to that effect. And I think that's the right approach. I don't know that I'm very grateful, and I supported bringing Lisa Dobbs' proposal to the floor, because I didn't know if I supported the actual details of the proposal, but I do support that we have to look at things. So I think they're doing it right to see where there is some cross-pollination, because like youth and aging, I think Lisa's idea was like all the things that involve people would be together. So like, youth, aging, veterans, but their issues are often very discrete. They're not there's not overlap in funding or program wise. So I do like the approach that the chairs are taking, which is what I believe chairs should have should lead a lot of the things. And my general leaning on the board is if a chair supports something, I support it, because they're the subject matter experts, unless I have something specific to say differently. And with committee attendance, if a committee's constantly not having quorum, that's something I believe that the officers should first bring to the chair. Being a committee chair is a big deal, and really I don't believe that the officers or the office should be reaching in, and my voting record on resolutions that really try and restrict what chairs can do or can't do is almost without variation against something that says, no, the chair must do this, the chair must do this, the chair must use 12-point font and double ruled paper. Things of so that being said, I believe that the chair should be giving a lot of leeway, but then they also should be held accountable, and somebody should ask a chair, why is the committee not having quorum, and do you need help? Is there an issue with the member? Have you called the member? Would you like to do a 3-way call with the member or something like that? But I really believe the chair should have an answer for why the committee is not having quorum. That would be the first step, certainly, because I wouldn't be consistent if I said the officers or the office should take this action against with respect to committee X without going through the chair.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Omar, welcome back. Julia?
Nothing for me.
Okay, well, Sergio, is there anything that, I know we've covered a lot, but is there anything that you would like to add that did not come up or that comes to mind now before we sign off?
I promise you, if I ever chair a meeting, I do not love the sound of my own voice, so I'm going to stop talking now. Okay. Because I do believe that I've had some of the shortest meetings ever, because if we finish the agenda and there's nothing to say, we're done. We are done. Nobody needs to tap dance. I'm done. I mean, I'm not always proud of having the shortest meetings. It means, we didn't get anything done, but sometimes it's just nothing to talk about. We did it, it's done. I'm like, okay, motion to adjourn. And that's, so I will end it on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in, as it were.
Thank you, Sergio. Yep.
Oh, Sergio, before you leave, this is
Yeah.
really more my own kind of expanding. It came up with Julie, the idea of Zooming versus in person. And I asked the question, which I had not thought of before. If the mayor keeps issuing the emergency declarations, which allows us to Zoom, would you basically have the board come in for in person?
No,
Anyway.
no.
No.
No, I think we, just based on my limited experience, I mean, I would have, I believe in Zoom. I believe in using the technology. I believe, one of the, if you can call it anything good coming out of COVID, was the fact that we're able to have this meeting right now the way we're having it. And have a substantive discussion with me, as a candidate for something, the nominating committee being able to ask me questions without a group of us having to drive different places. There are things that should be in person, or at least hybrid. The hearings where the neighborhood wants to come out, where the community wants to come out and be heard, where where you've got seniors and such. Visitation. My mother lives right next door to Visitation. That's where I grew up, 180 Van Cortlandt. Those things should have a personal side. Not a personal side, that's the wrong way to say it. They should have an in-person side to it. So I do believe that there are things that should be hybrid / or in person. But for the most part, I think using the technology is to say no is really you're that person in 1905 who's still advocating for kerosene lamps after electricity was invented. Like, no, wait, I've got all these lamps here. We got to use them. No, the technology has brought us someplace that we need to adapt to. That is my personal opinion, but I'm not running for chair, so it's not as if I'm going to get to call the meetings. But if Julie's ever out, if she wins the chairmanship, it'll be Zoom. I promise you that now. No, just kidding. I don't know if it'll be Zoom, but that's my answer to that question, Steve. I did have an opinion. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. Okay, so that concludes interviews for this evening, and I think we have not received any other, unless I missed it, because that's always possible. I don't think that we have other board members stepping forward to ask to be considered for nomination for any of the positions, including the 3 that were, quote, open. So I think at least Omar, you had described doing some outreach between meetings that had not been previously done. How did you?
Yes, he called me this evening. After I'm finished, I'm gonna call him back. So
Okay.
So you might get someone to apply for the health committee.
Okay, I mean, at this point, it may end up just being June, but we can talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. So the only things I had on my list in terms of committee business were, one, everybody responded that we can give Julia the 7 o'clock meeting spot on June 18th for the youth committee, and we would agree to start at 6. Although I have to say that at this moment, knowing that we have 3 meetings scheduled in the future, and we may have completed interviews, I don't see a situation where we would be necessarily needing that 3rd meeting at this point. So I don't want to never say never, but so we do have certainly the next meeting I think we should use, and that's June 1st, Thursday. So it's 2 Thursdays from now. And I think what we should plan to do, is that right? 2 Thursdays? I think so.
I think it's next Thursday, June 1st.
Oh, right. Today's Monday. Right. Next Thursday. Great. So I think what we should plan to do is vote. There may not be any contested positions, but we should finalize the slate, as it were. on June 1st. And we can, discuss any outreach that's come about in the interim. And go over the report, which will either be in some form of draft or people will have seen it or something like that. As we've discussed at prior meetings, I think that the only thing other than just a record of our proceedings will likely be that proposal having to do with the advanced scheduling of meetings, which I will try to get some language. That it was just going to be a recommendation, but we have to see how we feel about it. So discuss, vote, and report for June 1st, unless something else comes up, and please feel free to email if other things come up. What else do other people have on their agenda for tonight or for the next meeting that we should think about?
I don't have anything. However, I want to say I thank you, Chair, for the guidelines in the questioning and for my fellow committee members. Both the first meeting we had with interviewing people and this one as well, it just seems to be going seamlessly. And the candidate, correct me if I'm wrong, seem to just talk, and then you're looking at the other questions, maybe what, and you just bounce them off. Well, that's been answered, and it just makes everything just flow. That's my observation.
We on all fronts. Yep, but also, yeah, nothing else that comes to mind on the agenda side. So I think that makes sense. It's probably good, yeah, to save the voting, just given the time of the day, honestly now. But it might be good to save the voting for that next meeting.
Okay. Thanks very much, folks. So I guess meeting adjourned.
You got
Good
it.
night,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
See you
Appreciate it.
Thursday, but feel free to email in the interim. Thank you.
Alrighty.
Bye. I guess I'm supposed to stop recording.